You know that feeling that you used to get on Christmas morning when you were little? You would be like so excited. That's kind of how I feel. I get a little glimpse of that when I'm just starting to get to that point of finishing a quilt, and it is priceless. It's just an amazing feeling. So here is real quick. Let me do it this way. Here's all my columns. They have all been sewn together, just like I showed you yesterday. Or for me, it was yesterday. These are your 1/2 inch inseams. They've all been, sewn together, all my little blocks, all my squares. And I've done that for each and every row. I have kept the pins in. If you're doing flannel in between, I've kept the pins in. There's no reason to take them out yet. Once you have all of your columns sewn together, you can go in and pick those pins out because you might have been pricking yourself a few times, and it hurts. It's just kind of, one of the negatives to sewing. But anyway, I will show you the next step in terms of getting these together. What? Look at that little guy. He's like, what is going on in there? Just loves being outside, and this is a gorgeous time of year. All right, so I'm going to show you how to pin them together, and then I'm going to walk you over to the sewing machine so you can see exactly what I do. Now, I try to be as precise as I can. My precision has gotten better with each quilt I make. So if this is your first quilt, it may not be precise, and that's okay. Just keep going. That's part of the reason I started out sewing with my family. I started making stuff for them. All right, I'm going to show you exactly how I do this real quick. I line up, let me start from the beginning here. Okay, so I'm just taking these two rows here on the end, okay? And they're going to be sewn this way, so I'm going to attach them. And I line them up as best I can at the seams. So I've got a seam here, and then I just follow it down the line. I know my camera stinks. I apologize. But yeah, I just follow it on down, and I try to keep the seams together. Now, because this is not an exact science, there might be some that are a little longer, a little further than others. That's okay. You just do the best you can, because really the front of the quilt is what you want to pay the most attention to. And once I have it where I'm pretty sure it looks good enough for me, as a perfectionist, that is my new terminology, is good enough. I go in and I pin on the ends, because that's where the material tends to bulk up and get messy at the end of your stitch, the end of your seam. So I do there, and then I go in the middle. The middle of it. There we go. So I've got a pin here. And especially if you're new to sewing, just go ahead and pin it. There's nothing wrong with putting in a few additional pins. And I just make sure that these edges are lined up. I want those edges lined up. And like sometimes, see here, I've got something thick I've got to go through. I'll just move down a little ways. No big deal. And I just pin it as best I can. And if you don't mind, since we're nearing the end of this, I know this is a lot to ask. I'm not real familiar with YouTube, so I'm not even quite sure if this is possible. I would love to see pictures of what you guys have done, the people that have done this tutorial. I'd love to see the pictures of your quilts, because even if they're not perfect, they're gorgeous. You know why? Because you did it. You made it yourself. And it's not easy to do this, especially when you're starting out. It's downright hard sometimes. And you just have to have patience, and I know as a mom, my patience wears thin a lot of times. I wish I had more patience. Okay. So I'm just doing pins, pins, pins. I usually don't do quite this many, but I want you guys to see that it's okay to pin away. So cool seeing this stuff. This was his little go home outfit. Nothing better than bringing your baby home. Okay, here we go into my dining room slash, hello, craft room. All right, and I'm gonna put you here so you can see exactly what I do. All right. Come here for a minute. All right, so here's where all my pins are. This is where I pinned it, okay? So I'm gonna load it in my sewing machine with the pins up. You wanna make sure you're doing the right side. You don't wanna pin the wrong side. All right, this is a 1/2 inch inseam. I'm gonna put my presser foot down. And again, I don't lock these into place with a back stitch, but I do a little trick over the humps, and I'll show you different ways to do that. So hold on, let me get started here. I'm resting my fingertips on here. I am not pushing or moving or pulling at any of the fabric. I'm letting the machine do the work. I'm just guiding it. Once I get to about here, okay, this is a much better angle, so bear with me. I've got this inseam here. I have a bump. And because a lot of times the material will gather at the end of each square, and it doesn't matter if you have flannel in between or batting or, you know, the X. Sometimes when you have the X, it even gathers more. Because it puckers right here, I like to take my presser foot, hold on, let me do this in the exact order. Put your needle down in the fabric, down. Use your hand crank to make sure that your needle is completely down, okay? And you're gonna take your presser foot, that's this part of the machine that holds your fabric in place, and you're gonna pull up on it. Again, your needle is down. And I like to just push that fabric down underneath. Do you see that? Do you see how I do that? Because it hides the puckering. That's just my little trick. It's worked for me since the beginning, so I stick with it. If you happen to go over the speed bump this way, don't worry about it. This is just, I'm showing you exactly how I make my quilts and what has worked for me. And then you go nice and slow, because that's going to be a lot of material for the needle to go through. Sometimes you got to use your hand crank to push it through a little bit. And then you're back to normal. Okay? All right. And I'm going to do that little speed bump thing again in just a minute, and I'm going to show you exactly why I do that. In addition to puckering, you have a lot of fabric in there. Now my needle is down. I'm going to show you from this angle. See this extra fabric down here? If this bends this way, look at that. That's like a big, it's like a knot. It's just a lot of fabric that your needle has to go through, and it can cause the stitches to get really tight and close together. It's not the end of the world. I just don't like it. So I'm going to push up here on my lever, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to push this fabric underneath there, and see how this is now thinner? I don't have that big knot, that big ball of fabric. And I'm going to go over it again, nice and slow. Sometimes if it's real thick and bulky, I'll back stitch it and go over it again, so I make sure that it doesn't come loose in the quilt over time. Okay, I'm going to speed things up here and just go for it so that I can show you the finished. sometimes if it's real bulky, I'll use scissors that are closed to just push it down and get it under there. Okay, guys, I'm going to show you how this looks. I'm going to go ahead and take my pins out. Yes, baby. Wow. And again, if your seams line up, it's not the end of the world. It's not something that I really pursue. It's just nice if it does. Okay. There you go. That is two columns, one portion of the quilt right there. And I've taken them out, and then I'll show you the other. There's the inside. See how they just kind of line up as you go? And again, not the end of the world if it doesn't line up. This is not about perfection. To me, this is about fun. Just really try to have fun with this and don't stress yourself out. If you're a mom, you have enough to stress about other than quilting and sewing. Even if you're not a mom, you have enough to stress about. The world is full of stress. All right, so here we go. Hang in there. I know my camera is not the best, but there we go. There we have it. See there? Oh my goodness, there's that little tingly feeling about Christmas that I get where I can like feel it in my cheeks. I get so excited. Okay, so that's what we're going to do with all of these. And you're going to do the same thing with this coming over here. You're going to pin that. I'll show you real quick. And then I'll let you sew it. But I'll show you what I do is I flip this over and I come to the end and then I just keep pinning. And again, refer to that picture you took of your quilt with all the squares just kind of laid out before you sewed it. That way it'll help you keep it straight as far as where everything's supposed to go. Refer to it. When I first started doing this, I would like turn off the automatic screen shut off on my phone, and I would just keep that picture there the whole time. Kind of like when you go and get your hair done and you just have a picture there for the hairdresser if you have a particular style you want. It's just good for reference. So keep that around, and the next step, once these are sewn together, is we're going to do a seam around the whole thing. We're going to stitch around the entire blanket to keep all those seams in place. We're going to lock them in place, and then we're going to snip, we're going to wash, and you're done. It's going to be so great. Talk to you soon.